One man could read 2 pages of a book simultaneously, one with each eye, and remember 98% of everything he ever read. Another could conduct 250 symphonies and 100 operas entirely from memory, knowing every single note for every instrument. And someone once recited over 100,000 digits of the number pi, a feat that took over 16 hours straight. These aren't tales from fiction. They are real stories of minds with almost unbelievable recall. Get ready to have your mind blown by these incredible feats of memory from history. Number 8. The card counter, who became a memory legend. Dominic O'Brien wasn't born with a super memory. In fact, as a child, he struggled with attention and was even misdiagnosed with dyslexia. He found school difficult and left at 16 with few qualifications. His life took a sharp turn in 1987 when he saw a man named Creighton Carvello memorize a deck of 52 playing cards on a British television show in just under 3 minutes. Dominic was captivated. He thought, if that man can do it, maybe I can too. He decided then and there to train his brain. Dominic started by trying to memorize a single deck of cards. It was incredibly hard at first. He described how the numbers and suits would just blur together. But he didn't give up. He began developing his own system, a technique now famously known as the Dominic system. This system involves associating numbers with people and actions and placing them along a familiar journey in his mind, a version of the ancient method of loci, or memory palace technique. For example, the number 1 might be associated with a specific famous person whose initials are A, and the number 5 with someone whose initials are E. Then when he sees the number 15, he imagines the first person doing an action associated with the second person. He would then mentally place this vivid image at a specific point along a route he knew well, like his walk to school or around his house. He practiced relentlessly. He'd sit for hours, shuffling decks of cards and trying to commit them to memory faster and faster. His first breakthrough was memorizing a deck in 25 minutes, then 15, then 10, then 5. He realized he had a knack for this. Within a year of starting his training, Dominic O'Brien entered his first World Memory Championship in 1991. He won. It was an astonishing achievement for someone who had started from scratch just a short time before. Dominic went on to win the World Memory Championship a staggering 8 times between 1991 and 2001. His feats were legendary. He set a world record by memorizing the order of a single shuffled deck of 52 cards in just 42.6 seconds. Imagine seeing 52 random cards flash before your eyes and then recalling their exact sequence. He also memorized 54 shuffled decks of cards after looking at each card only once. That's 2,808 cards in total. He could recall their order, and if you named a card, he could tell you its exact position within those 54 decks. He once memorized 2,385 random binary digits in 30 minutes. He also learned to memorize long sequences of numbers, names, and faces. His success brought attention to the world of memory sports and proved that extraordinary memory isn't just an innate gift, but can be a trainable skill. His techniques are now studied and used by memory enthusiasts all over the globe. Because he was so good at card counting in casinos using his memory skills, he was eventually banned from casinos in Britain, Las Vegas, and other parts of the world. Number 7. The Renaissance man who knew everything by heart. Giovanni Pico della Mirandola was a shining star of the Italian Renaissance, a period bursting with intellectual and artistic genius. Born in 1463, he was a nobleman, a philosopher, and a scholar. But perhaps one of his most talked about talents was his unbelievable memory. People at the time whispered that he had read and memorized every significant book available to him, and in the 15th century, that was a monumental claim. Pico wasn't just a casual reader. He devoured texts in Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. He sought out knowledge from all corners of the known world, studying everything from classical philosophy and Christian theology to Jewish Kabbalah and Arabic science. Contemporaries reported that he could quote extensively from a vast array of these complex and often lengthy works, seemingly at will. If someone mentioned a passage or a concept, Pico could often recite the original text, discuss its nuances, and connect it to dozens of other ideas from different books and traditions. His mind was like a colossal, interconnected library. One famous story illustrating his memory and his ambition centers around his 900 Theses. In 1486, when he was just 23 years old, Pico proposed to defend 900 theses, short statements or propositions, on a wide range of philosophical, theological, and magical topics in a public debate in Rome. He invited scholars from all over Europe to dispute them with him, offering to pay the travel expenses of anyone who came. These weren't just simple statements. They were drawn from an enormous body of diverse sources, many of which he knew by heart. To even compose such a list required an incredible command of existing knowledge. Though the public debate never fully materialized due to controversy over some of his theses, the Church found some of them heretical. The act of publishing them demonstrated the breadth and depth of his learning, all underpinned by his formidable memory. Historians and biographers, from his time and later, noted his capacity for recall. It was said he could recite entire books of poetry or complex philosophical arguments after only one or two readings. While it's hard to scientifically verify the exact limits of his memory centuries later, the consistent accounts from various credible sources paint a picture of a man whose mental storage was legendary even in an age that valued memorization much more highly than ours does today. Before widespread printing made books more accessible, a powerful memory was a crucial tool for any scholar. Pico, however, seemed to possess this tool to an almost superhuman degree. He wasn't just a repository of facts. His memory fueled his innovative thinking, allowing him to synthesize diverse ideas into new philosophical frameworks, most notably in his famous Oration on the Dignity of Man. His ability to hold so much information in his mind allowed him to see connections that others missed, making him one of the most original thinkers of his time. Number 6. The human camera, who draws cities from memory. Stephen Wiltshire is an artist with an extraordinary gift. Can take a brief helicopter ride over a sprawling cityscape paint, think Rome, Tokyo, New York, or London, and then, days later, draw an incredibly detailed, panoramic landscape of that city entirely from memory. His drawings are not just general impressions. They often include the correct number of windows on buildings, specific architectural features, and the relative scale and position of hundreds, sometimes thousands of structures. People call him the human camera, for good reason. Born in London in 1974, Stephen was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. He was mute as a young child, and it was through drawing that he first began to communicate with the world. His early interests were cars, then animals, and eventually buildings. Teachers at his school noticed his exceptional talent. They would take him on field trips, and he would come back and draw what he had seen with astonishing accuracy. One famous early story involves him drawing Salisbury Cathedral perfectly after seeing it just once. The true scale of his ability became internationally known through a series of televised experiments and public drawing sessions. In one well-documented instance, after a 20-minute helicopter flight over Rome, Stephen spent 3 days creating a panoramic drawing of the ancient city on a nearly 16-foot-long canvas. The drawing was so accurate that it included the precise number of columns on the Pantheon. He has done similar feats for Tokyo, Hong Kong, Frankfurt, Madrid, Dubai, Jerusalem, Sydney, Shanghai, Brisbane, Singapore, Istanbul, Mexico City, and New York, among others. For his New York panorama, drawn after a single 20-minute helicopter ride, he worked for 5 days at the Pratt Institute, creating a stunningly intricate image on a 19-foot canvas. What makes Stephen's memory so remarkable is its visual and spatial nature. He seems to store these vast cityscapes as complete, detailed images in his mind. While drawing, he often listens to music on headphones, seemingly absorbed in his own world. Yet his pen moves with unerring confidence, capturing the essence and detail of the urban environment. He typically starts with an outline, and then meticulously fills in the buildings and streets, often working from one side of the canvas to the other. Neurologist Oliver Sacks, who studied Stephen, was fascinated by his abilities, noting how his art was not just a feat of memory, but also possessed a unique aesthetic quality. Stephen Wiltshire's work challenges our understanding of the limits of visual recall and artistic expression. He has received numerous accolades for his work and was appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE, for services to art in 2006. His permanent gallery in London showcases his incredible drawings, testaments to a memory that can capture the soul of a city. Number 5. The Keepers of Epic Sagas Before Written Words. Imagine a world without books, without writing, where all history, all stories, all cultural knowledge had to be carried in human minds and passed down from generation to generation through spoken word alone. This was the reality for much of human history, and it gave rise to an incredible tradition of oral poetry and storytelling, where individuals possessed memories capable of holding entire epics. These weren't just short tales. They were vast, sprawling narratives, often thousands of lines long, filled with complex plots, genealogies, and rich descriptive language. Think of the ancient Greek bards, the Aeoidoi, who recited epic poems like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. The Iliad alone contains over 15,000 lines of dactylic hexameter, a complex poetic meter. The Odyssey has over 12,000. For centuries before these poems were written down, around the 8th century BCE, they were performed from memory by skilled reciters. These bards didn't just memorize word for word like a static script. They often improvised within a traditional framework, using stock, phrases, epithets, and narrative patterns. But the core story, its characters, and its key events were faithfully preserved and transmitted through generations. To be a respected bard meant having a colossal mental archive of stories, poetic formulas, and mythic lore. This phenomenon wasn't unique to ancient Greece. In India, the Vedas, ancient sacred texts, comprising hymns, prayers, and philosophical treatises, were orally transmitted for millennia with astounding accuracy by Brahmin priests before being committed to writing. The Mahabharata, one of the 2 major Sanskrit epics of ancient India, is one of the longest poems ever written, with about 1.8 million words in total, or around 100,000 shlokas, couplets. While it eventually took written form, its roots are deeply embedded in oral tradition, and parts of it were memorized and recited long before. Similarly, the Ramayana, another vast epic, lived in oral performance. In West Africa, the griots, or jalis, are traditional storytellers, musicians, and oral historians. For centuries, they have been the custodians of their people's history, genealogies, and cultural traditions, memorizing and recounting vast amounts of information, often in the form of epic poems or praise songs, sometimes accompanied by instruments like the kora. The Epic of Sundiata, telling the story of the founding of the Mali Empire, is a prime example of a work preserved and performed by griots for hundreds of years. Techniques these oral poets and storytellers used often involved rhythm, meter, repetition, formulaic phrases, and vivid imagery, all of which aid memorization. Their training was rigorous, often starting in childhood. The sheer volume of material they could recall and perform is a testament to the incredible capacity of human memory when honed for this specific purpose. These individuals weren't just entertainers. They were living libraries, the crucial links in the chain of cultural continuity, ensuring that the stories and wisdom of their ancestors were not lost to time. Their feats of memory were essential to the cohesion and identity of their societies. Number 4. The maestro who knew every note by heart. Arturo Toscanini, the legendary Italian conductor, was renowned for his musical genius, his fiery temperament, and something else quite extraordinary: his photographic memory for musical scores. Born in Parma, Italy in 1867, Toscanini conducted some of the world's greatest orchestras and opera companies for nearly 7 decades, and for most of his career he conducted entirely from memory. This wasn't just for a few familiar pieces. His repertoire was vast, encompassing an estimated 250 symphonies and around 100 operas. Imagine an orchestral score. It's not just a single line of music. It contains the parts for every instrument in the orchestra: strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion, all playing simultaneously, sometimes with incredibly complex harmonies and rhythms. An opera score is even more demanding, adding vocal lines, chorus parts, and stage directions. Toscanini was said to have all of this information perfectly memorized for every piece he conducted. He knew every note, every dynamic marking, every tempo change for every single instrument. His incredible memory was apparent early in his career. The story of his conducting debut is legendary. In 1886, at the age of 19, he was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, playing cello in a touring Italian opera company. The local conductor for Verdi's Aida proved incompetent and was booed off the stage. The singers and orchestra members, knowing young Toscanini had an amazing memory and knew the opera intimately, he had helped coach the singers, urged him to take over. With no time to even look at the score, Toscanini stepped onto the podium and conducted the entire opera, a long and complex work perfectly from memory. The performance was a triumph, and his conducting career was launched. Throughout his long career, musicians who played under him marveled at his recall. If a violinist played a wrong note or a horn player missed an accent, Toscanini would instantly stop the rehearsal and correct them, often singing or humming the correct part from memory, sometimes even specifying the bar number and the exact marking in their individual part. He was known to have studied scores so intensely that he could visualize each page. There are accounts of him correcting errors in printed scores that had gone unnoticed for years, simply because his memorized version was more accurate or consistent with the composer's intent. While his eyesight deteriorated significantly in his later years, making it difficult for him to read even large print, this only reinforced his reliance on his already prodigious memory. He continued to conduct complex programs without a score in front of him well into his 80s. Some said his memory was so precise that if he learned a piece with a misprint in the score, he would continue to conduct that error even after it was pointed out, because that was how it was fixed in his mind. Arturo Toscanini's memory wasn't just a party trick. It was an integral part of his musical interpretation, allowing him a profound and direct connection to the music he brought to life. Number 3. The never-ending number and the man who recited it for 16 hours. Pi is that famous mathematical constant, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. Its decimal representation never ends and never enters a permanently repeating pattern. Memorizing pi is a classic, if somewhat eccentric, test of memory endurance. Many have tried to memorize a few dozen or even a few hundred digits. But imagine reciting it to tens of thousands of digits. That's exactly what Akira Haraguchi, a retired Japanese engineer, did, setting an unofficial world record. On October 3, 2006, then 60-year-old Akira Haraguchi began reciting the digits of pi from memory at a public hall in Kisarazu, east of Tokyo. He started early in the morning. Hour after hour, he continued. Spectators, officials, and local education board members watched in shifts, verifying each digit against a master list. He took short breaks every couple of hours for rice bowls and to use the restroom, but his mental focus remained unbroken. The numbers just kept flowing. After 16 hours and 30 minutes, in the early hours of October 4th, Haraguchi finally reached his target, 100,000 decimal places of pi. This wasn't his first attempt at such a feat. He had previously recited 83,431 digits in 2005, but he was determined to push the boundary further. To achieve this, Haraguchi developed his own mnemonic system. He assigned kana syllables, Japanese phonetic characters, to each digit from 0 to 9. Then he created stories and poems by combining these syllables. So, instead of memorizing a dry string of numbers, he was memorizing a series of vivid, meaningful narratives. For example, a sequence like 39 might translate into a short phrase or a part of a larger story. He reportedly had a collection of about 800 such stories, many of them common Japanese folk tales or original creations to encode the digits. The sheer mental stamina required for such a performance is difficult to comprehend. It's not just about having the digits stored in memory. It's about maintaining concentration for an extremely long period, retrieving the information accurately under pressure, and resisting mental fatigue. Haraguchi described the process as a religion of the soul and often spoke about the philosophical or spiritual aspects of his endeavor. He saw it as a way to explore the mysteries of the universe and human potential. While the Guinness World Records officially recognizes Lu Chao of China for reciting 67,890 digits in 2005, a feat that took 24 hours and 4 minutes, Haraguchi's 100,000-digit recitation, though not officially ratified by Guinness under their then-current rules for such attempts, is Wide Lushi's 100,000-digit recitation, though not officially acknowledged as an extermination. He even surpassed his own record in 2015, reciting 111,700 digits. Such feats highlight the incredible capacity of the human mind to store and retrieve vast quantities of abstract information when highly motivated and equipped with effective mnemonic strategies. It's a marathon of the mind, pushing the known limits of numerical recall. Number 2. The man who could not forget. Imagine a memory so perfect, so vivid, that you remembered almost everything you ever experienced, but not just the facts, the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and feelings, all preserved with crystal clarity. This was the life of Solomon Shershevsky, a Russian journalist who lived in the early to mid-20th century, known to the world of psychology simply as S. His astonishing memory was studied for nearly 30 years by the renowned neuropsychologist Alexander Yuri. S's memory seemed to have no discernible limits. He could memorize long strings of numbers, complex mathematical formulas, tables of random letters, or lengthy poems in foreign languages. He didn't understand all after just a few minutes of study, and he could recall this information perfectly weeks, months, or even years later. Luria would test him by giving him, for example, a matrix of 50 numbers, could read them off forwards, backwards, diagonally, or recall any specific number by its coordinates in the table. 15 years later, Luria asked him to recall that same table, and S did so, apparently re-experiencing the original moment he memorized it. What made Cec's memory so powerful and also so unusual was his profound synesthesia. Synesthesia is a neurological condition where stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to automatic involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. For every sound had a shape, color, taste, and texture. A spoken word wasn't just an auditory event. It was a rich, multi-sensory experience. Numbers, too, had personalities and appearances. For example, the number 1 was a proud, well-built man. 2 was a high-spirited woman. 6 was a man with a swollen foot. These rich, automatic sensory associations helped to impartate information deeply and made it highly memorable. When asked to memorize a series of words, he wouldn't just hear them. He would see a series of images, often walking along a familiar street in his mind, a natural use of the method of loci, and placing these complex sensory images of the words at various points. To recall them, he would simply walk down the street again and see what he had placed. However, this extraordinary memory was not without its downside. He had great difficulty forgetting. Unwanted memories, trivial details, and the intense sensory experiences associated with everything cluttered his mind. If he was trying to understand an abstract concept or the meaning of a passage of text, the flood of specific images and sensations associated with each word could be overwhelming and distracting. Reading, which for most is about extracting meaning, was for him a process of experiencing a cascade of images. He also found it hard to recognize faces because they were constantly changing with expression and lighting, creating too many distinct sensory imprints. He even had to consciously will himself to forget things, sometimes imagining writing them on a blackboard and then erasing them or putting them into an imaginary container. His life demonstrated that an almost perfect memory, while seemingly a superpower, could also be a profound burden, highlighting the importance of the brain's ability not just to remember, but also to filter and forget. Number 1. The real Rain Man, whose brain was a universe of facts. Lawrence Kimpeek, born in 1951 in Salt Lake City, Utah, was the real-life inspiration for Dustin Hoffman's character, Raymond Babbitt, in the movie Rain Man. Kimpeek's actual abilities were in many ways even more astounding than those portrayed on screen. He was a mega savant, meaning he possessed a vast and profound memory across a huge range of subjects, coupled with developmental disabilities. From a very early age, Kim displayed an insatiable appetite for information and an uncanny ability to retain it. He learned to read before the age of 2 and by adulthood had memorized by his own and his father Franz's estimate around 12,000 books. And he didn't just skim them. He read incredibly fast, a page with each eye simultaneously. His left eye read the left page, his right eye read the right page, absorbing the content in about 8 to 10 seconds per 2-page spread. He retained approximately 98% of what he read. His father would test him by asking him about obscure facts from books he'd read years earlier, and Kim would often recall not only the fact, but also the page number, and sometimes even the position on the page. His areas of expertise were incredibly diverse. He knew U.S. history, world history, sports statistics, geography. He could tell you how to get from any city to any other city in the U.S., including all the roads and towns in between. Classical music. He could identify thousands of compositions. Literature, Shakespeare, the Bible, and the U.S. area codes and zip codes for virtually the entire country. First foremost, if you gave him your date of birth, he could instantly tell you what day of the week you were born on and what major news headlines occurred on that day. Could also perform complex calendar calculations in his head, figuring out, for example, what day of the week Easter would fall on in any given year, past or future. Despite these incredible mental talents, Kim faced significant challenges in daily life. He was born with brain abnormalities, including agenesis of the corpus callosum. The bundle of nerves connecting the two hemispheres of the brain was missing, an enlarged head, and damage to his cerebellum. These contributed to difficulties with motor skills. He couldn't button his shirt or tie his shoes, and with abstract or conceptual thinking, he struggled with social interactions. Though after the movie Rain Man brought him international attention, he began to travel and meet people, which his father believed helped him develop more social confidence and empathy. Kim Peek wasn't an autistic savant, as Raymond Babbitt was portrayed. His condition was diagnosed as FG syndrome, a rare genetic disorder. His memory was not based on rote learning alone. He could connect facts and find patterns, though he found it hard to interpret proverbs or understand nuanced language. His mind was a repository of an almost unimaginable quantity of factual data, perfectly indexed and instantly accessible. He once read a Tom Clancy novel in 1 hour and 25 minutes and could answer any question about its plot, characters, or even specific technical details of the weapon he described. Kim Peek's life and abilities offered a profound glimpse into the extraordinary and mysterious capabilities of the human brain, showing how different minds can process and store information in ways that stretch our understanding of memory itself.